And I'm assuming y'all can see and hear me okay. The audio is acceptable. That's good. We need good audio. So thanks for being here. We're just going to do a short sit just to kind of tune in a little bit and drop away from whatever you've been doing. Um, so we're just going to sit for like 2 minutes and then I'll get into the teaching in larger practice for our session here today. So if you like, you can just kind of come into your body, allowing the eyes to close. And coming right into the fullness of your direct experience, a direct knowing, a direct being, by feeling all of the sensations of the body, all of the breathing related sensations in the body. And just allowing yourself to be fully present for your experience, just as it is. And just all of us here for the next minute, cultivating the quality of mindfulness. All right. Thank you for being here. So this is mindfulness lunchtime practice. So I thought I would do a teaching on mindfulness, everybody's favorite topic. And I thought I would, as you mentioned in my bio, which was great. I like the stuff you selected. Something that goes back to the original teachings that's maybe more relevant now than when it was written. And when you look at the teachings of mindfulness as they appear in what's known as the Satipatthana Sutta, which is probably the most famous, you know, sutta from the Pali Canon at this point. Many books have been written about it. Bhikkhu Anayo has written like 4 books about it. It's sort of everywhere now. It's a very interesting sutta in the sense it doesn't read or look like other suttas it's really been worked over. It's been really, really crafted. It's very, very highly organized. It has a definition, it has a refrain, and it has these kind of four primary foundations of mindfulness where we're being asked to attune more deeply to the body, the somatic body, the Vedana feelings, the pleasant pain dichotomy, the mental states, the mental attitudes, the mind experience, mentality, psychological experience, and then the things called dhammas, which is kind of like everything else. Mind functions. So it's really a kind of user's manual to the inner world. And when he goes through the definition, he kind of tells you to bring awareness or mindfulness or attention to these four aspects of our experience. But he asks us to develop four particular qualities in doing so. And I'll kind of just name those a little bit and maybe reframe them a little bit because I think some of the translations aren't quite accurate. Usually it's to bring
Well,
mindfulness
up
to
there.
these
You put
four
it behind.
qualities by being diligent,
We'll go in your
by
room.
clear knowing, by being mindful, and by being free from discontent and desire to the world, which is the one I want to highlight. So diligence really more about being careful about how we're attending to our experience. Clear knowing is a little bit of a complicated word because clear knowing, what does that actually mean? It actually really means direct knowing, knowing things directly. And this is where we get present moment. You've probably heard this present moment business. Attending to the present moment is about directly knowing things as they are directly arising in the context of right now. So it's not so much clear knowing, it's direct knowing. And then the other one is mindful, and I always get upset when they use a word to define a word. But this other one is when we're practicing Buddha's instruction is can we, should we be, are we able to be free from our desires and our discontents in regards to the world? Now, this is very relevant more now than probably ever. It's interesting. I always find it interesting. Why did the Buddha put that in there? What was going on in the world of ancient India that you would want to be free from the desires and the discontents? But I think without getting into social politics and all that, I'm sure everybody is aware that the status of things in America right now are not fabulous, and people are concerned about a number of things in a number of different ways, probably more so now than ever for a variety of reasons. Probably we could blame the phone and the internet and a lot of stuff on that. But when we're practicing, the instruction is can we be free from that? Can we put that aside? Actually, the literal translation is putting aside our desires and discontents, not suppressing them, not pretending they're not there, not becoming apathetic, but just saying, like, can we just put that aside for 20 minutes? And my desires and discontents about the world. And, what is that? So there's like one of the people who does a great job of talking about, so let's just talk about what the world is and how complicated of a concept that is. We have this word loka would be the term in Pali that would be most accurate. The world. When we think of the world in kind of growing up in Western society, we think of the world of that which is really out there. The world that is out there. And we're, I don't know about you, but I'm very preoccupied and very concerned. And I have a lot of desires and discontents in regards to the world. And if I don't pay attention to that and I don't make some kind of boundaries around that and I don't practice with that, I'm overwhelmed. And it's just unhealthy for me to be too caught up in all of that. And so that is a very conceptual world. The world that we're really trying to cultivate with mindfulness, at least at the onset of practice, is the internal world. What's going on in here? So we do have the world of our direct experience, which is kind of really what the Buddha is trying to get at from the preliminary onset of mind, in my body, in my feelings, in my house, in my living room, in the world that I navigate every single day. And can I be more primarily focused on that world and act more responsibly, more ethically in the world that I live in, the world of lived experience, the world of right now? And that's hard to do. But I think we really have to take care of that world first. Now, the other thing that makes the practice complicated is the way that we think about the world, that which is really out there. In the time of the Buddha, and especially and not even just Buddhists, but in ancient India, that's not how they saw it really so much. They didn't really buy into this idea so much that there's a world that just that which is really out there. Their assessment is the world is created internally through the five aggregates. This five aggregates teaching is on every other page of the Pali Canon, and there's not a more of all the topics we hear about, this is the number one topic, is the five aggregates, and that we create the world, we construct the world one moment at a time, and then we kind of project that onto our experience. So a contemplative training in early Buddhist thought would be more interested in how are we creating the world, not as if there's this world that's really, really out there. And they're more interested in that focus and how do we construct the world that we live in. And we always know, I mean, you probably figured this out without too long, is it's really sort of psychedelic because we construct the world and then we live in the world that we just constructed. And so that's kind of psychedelic if you think about that for a minute. And then the question becomes, and I think the primary training that the Buddha, what he awoke to, is if you change your mind, then you change the world. And that the world that you really live in, really, really, is the world of your mind. And it's probably in your best interest to get that world sorted. What is the mind world that you live in? How is it in there, y'all? It's not always that great in here, I can be honest with you. And then that becomes, and then I go, well, the reason it's not great in here, the reason I'm having a hard time in here is because it's so fucked out there. And so what happens is now I'm blaming the world, that which is really out there, for my internal struggle. So now I'm back asswards. You know what I mean? I'm kind of going outside in. And that's not what Buddhist liberation is. Liberation is 100% an inside job. First and foremost. As they say, if you've ever been to an Al-Anon meeting, before you help other people, put your mask on first, if you've ever been on an airplane, right? That stands true. Like, take care of yourself and then help somebody else. But if I'm a mess, I can help zero people, right? And it almost sounds like, it's really, really hard to negotiate that right now because it's like there's an attitude out there that, like, if you're not outraged about what's going on, you're somehow being irresponsible or you're apathetic or you don't care. And like that's just really kind of, I think, something that's worth standing up towards. Saying, actually, that's not really, I didn't get into this practice for that. So it's not that I'm denying that. I'm not apathetic. It's not that I don't care. It's that I'm saying, like, well, first and foremost, I need to be okay in my own direct experience, right? So then we have the mindfulness teachings, which is about understanding the internal world. We do have, and also too, I'm not denying that. I do believe there is a world that which is really out there. And then, so then there's that internal experience, the external experience, and then the middle way that the Buddha talks about, and this is really tricky as well, is what is the relationship between those two worlds? As the existential, one of the early existential writers, Heidegger, would say, being in the world. How am I being in this world in a way that I can feel good about? And I think that when we're doing the practice, if I sit for 30 minutes in the morning, as I do most mornings, one of the primary things that keeps me from being attuned into the present moment experience, one of the biggest distractors is, what do I want? What do I don't want? This kind of desire and discontenting. In many ways, it's kind of the first two hindrances. When I wake up every day at my house and I look at my schedule and I think about what I have today, the first thing my mind does is I think about all of the things that I want to happen today and all of the things that I don't want to happen today. And, I don't think I'm going to get out of that. That's just part and parcel. But then the question becomes, well, can I just practice with that more? Or do I get caught into needing things to be a certain way? And if we are living our lives from the assumption that everything out there needs to be okay for me to be okay, you're going to have a hell of a time. You're going to have a really, really hard time. And so, this creates, I think, a really, especially in the society and the world that we live in now, a really interesting practice point of if I can see that's this experience I'm having, then how do I want to relate to that in a way that feels good for me, that I feel stable, my mind is stable. And also there's a quality of kindness or a possibility of care or concern. And if you want to add compassion to this, because I think people always say, well, where's compassion and all this? We don't want to just be cold, right? From the kind of perspective of mindfulness as a kind of, we would say in the third foundation of mindfulness, the mental state. How is the stability of mind? Compassion is very clearly defined, where as I am an individual, an agent living in the world, and as I relate to this kind of agent arena relationship, and how am I in that relationship? Compassion says, how do I relate to the world in a way where I don't become overwhelmed? Because if I become overwhelmed, I'm going to help zero people. And how do I also not disconnect? So how do we be in the world mindful, aware, direct knowing, careful, without becoming overwhelmed or without disconnecting? Now, there's another middle way for you, because, disconnecting, the weird thing about disconnecting is, I don't know if anybody has one of these. Does anybody have one of these little devices? Maybe you're on one. I use my phone to disconnect. But what I do, honestly, is I disconnect into what I'm trying to disconnect from. Like, the world is overwhelming. There's all kinds of shit going on. There's all these uncertainties. Okay, let me pick up my phone and disconnect from that. Well, no, I didn't disconnect from that. I just wired back into the matrix. Like, I don't know if I find myself doing this. I'm like, this is insane. So then the question becomes, well, what am I disconnecting from? What I'm disconnecting from is how I feel about it all. I'm just trying to disconnect from the emotion. I'm trying to disconnect from the dukkha, from the uncertainty, from the dissatisfaction. I'm trying to disconnect. Really, to be honest with you, I'm trying to disconnect from myself, which is just kind of a bad idea, right? And then I go into the world, that which is really out there. And it's really, really hard now. It was hard at the time of the Buddha, but the world, that which is really, really out there, comes through this. This is your portal into that which is really, really out there. There's a great philosopher, scholar, you might be familiar with him, Karl Popper, who's written a lot about this. He's an Australian philosopher. He talks about, he has a three-world philosophy. And that there's the physical world of direct experience, phenomenological experience. There's the world of the mind, and then there's the world of abstraction, concepts. Now, however many people there are here today, maybe there's 20 of us here today, we all kind of live in the same world, we could say colloquially, but we all live in a very, very different world. And everybody's concept of the world is very, very different, even though there might be similar overlaps. So we have to be very careful that we don't think that we understand the world conceptually and what needs to happen out there and what these people need to do and what those people need to do. We really have to, I think, resist the temptation to take sides, to have views and opinions. I do believe that there is a guy named Donald Trump who is actually the president of the United States. That's what the world tells me. I've never met him. I've never been in a room with him. I actually have no evidence to suggest the guy exists. I believe that he does, but I don't fucking know. So there's so much stuff that I don't know. And there's so many views and opinions about that I take on that are getting piped into me that I have to be very, very careful about this. Because this is where the Zen Buddhists have it down pat. It's like, we don't know. And what I do know is I do know the world of my direct experience. I do know that it's, 55 degrees in sunny Colorado and my son or my nephew are upstairs. And I know this world directly. I can truly tune into this world. But this conceptual world, the world that I actually don't know jack shit about that, really. But yet, if you ask me questions about that, I'll be honest with you, I have a whole bunch of views and opinions about that world that I know nothing about, that I actually sort of really don't live in. And also, I can suffer a great deal about that world, that in which I know nothing about. That's all imagined, it's all conceptual. So the suffering of the imagination, the imaginational aspects of the mind, the suffering that we can experience there is overwhelming. And then we can get into this kind of anxiety based future, hyperbolic, you know, it's all going down. And we know, in the grand scheme of things, the human beings aren't going to make it. We aren't going to live for eternity. And something's going to take us out at some point, and we might get taken out sooner, and we might get taken out on our own behavior. That's plausible concern. But this is why the practice of mindfulness is like saying, okay, fine. I'm not denying that. I'm not trying to tell you what to think about that. But right now, in this moment, I can tell you I'm okay. Right now in my world, everything's okay here. So the Buddha's kind of constantly trying to bring you back to check in and go, okay, like, what's going on right now? How are you right now? I'm breathing. My body's good. I've had water. I've had food. I'm healthy. I'm not sick. My kids are okay. 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 That's really what's going on. And can I just remember to recognize, to return back to that world as much as I possibly can, because that's the world I live in anyway. And so I think now, I don't know many of you or any of you really, but maybe we'll talk a little bit here at the end. Is that how much you take the practice, whether it's mindfulness or Dharma or Buddhism, however you hold all of this. If there was ever a time to really double down on the practice of the Dharma, you've certainly entered that time. That time is right now. And can we really embody these qualities that we hear so much about, that many of us have probably, at least on a logical level, go, yeah, the Buddha seems to be on to like some kind of way of living that seems pretty good. And then we just have to, then our life just becomes a practice of like, okay, like how much do I want to, what world am I living in? What world am I creating for myself to live in? For me, what world am I, we're very careful at our house about talking about these things. Like, what kind of a world do I want to create for my kids? That my kids are 6 and 12. They don't need to be thinking about this shit, And so we have to be careful about what we say or don't say. And I think we all could benefit from taking a big pause from all this and go, okay, like, how do we really want to relate to this? And what would it be like to use this definition clearly from the text where the Buddha's like, put aside your desire and discontent in regards to the world, at least for some time every day. Tune in, recharge, rejuvenate. So I thought we would do that. I think I've said enough about that. Let's give that a try. And so I'm just going to offer some instructions that are really just completely from the texts. And then we can practice that here together. And I'll make sure I save some time. If you have any questions about anything I've said or the practice, and we can take some time for that here in just a bit. So thank you for your kind attention. And you can finding it just an upright, comfortable way to sit. And so, working through these four foundations of mindfulness with these four definition instructions, and beginning by just carefully attending to the body. So, there is a body, seeing if you can pour your mind down inside of your body. And as you tune into the body as best you can, to just really see if you can begin to recognize that your body is the portal to the present moment. The body is always a direct knowing. It's always a right now, only right now experience that can be known directly. It's really just right there. You don't really have to look too hard. So just for a few minutes or so, to see if you can just allow yourself to carefully attend. Carefully attending, knowing directly the body just as the body is right now. And if you like, you can use some phrases to incline the mind towards the body. There is a body. There is a body sitting. There is a body breathing. And as you continue to practice in this way, you may see that there are certain ideas or thoughts that emerge, largely about things that you want or don't want, concerns or worries. That's okay. As any ideas begin to pull you from the direct knowing of the body into the concepts of a world that is really out there, in which there's things I need to do, things I need to fear, avoid, change, control. See if you can just let yourself be free from that for now. Seeing if you can just follow the instruction of just to put that aside. Just put that down for now. And as you feel more deeply into the body, perhaps feeling into the heart center, to see if you can feel this internal wish or desire you have to be free right now. In the Buddhist tradition, what we would call metta, a well-wishing of, may I be at ease in this world just as it is. May I be at ease in this mind just as it is. May I be content in this moment just as it is. And seeing if you become more tuned into, more familiar with the internal world of your body, of mind, heart. And to come to know directly this world. The world of presence, of ease. And see if you can come to more deeply know or to familiarize yourself with this world. The world of now, lived experience. The world of wishing well towards yourself. May I be at ease. May I be present and awake for each moment as it arises and passes away, each breath as it arises and passes away. And then to check in and to inquire, what does it feel like? How is it to be free from your desires and discontents about the world? To finding an inner refuge, an inner experience of presence and ease that's not dependent upon any external conditions. And this freedom that's promised in the practice is to be understanding that my happiness does not come from external conditions, nor my suffering from external conditions. But really, my happiness and my suffering is dependent upon the inner qualities of mind and heart that I can cultivate here and now, and only here and now. So we'll just practice here together in silence for the last 2 minutes or so. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your practice. So, some time left to, if you have any questions about anything I've said so far or any clarifications, or really anything at all, or anything you want to ask or say, you can probably, some of you are probably pretty well Zoomed. If you go to React, you can show your hand up, or you can maybe just do one of these, and or you can write your question in the chat if you like. But I'd be very happy to hear any thoughts or questions that you might have this morning. I'm sure everybody's aware of everything I've spoken about. So, yeah, Victoria, please.
Hi, Dave. It's just always so fabulous to see you. And I was delighted to see that you've come to Big Bear. I still haven't been to Big Bear in the flesh, but I'm hoping very much to go sometime. I just love the way you pull it all together. And I've probably actually mentioned this to you in some previous incarnation. But but I unplugged from like daily following the world news back actually in when after 9/11, um and which now is probably like half a lifetime ago, because I found that it made me really depressed, really negative. It paralyzed me, so I couldn't live my daily life in the world, because I am so empathic. I took it all in all the time, and I'm under a constant onslaught of criticism to this day. I mean, even after more than 2 decades, like from family, friends, you name it, Sangha friends, even, who feel that I'm irresponsible. And anyway, I think you know where I'm going with this. But so um, I've tried to use the what I call the oxygen mask
Yeah,
metaphor as a way of responding to people's sort of criticism and condemnation, but
yeah,
it still feels like I don't get anywhere with that. And so I'm just wondering if you can say a few more words on like how to respond wisely and not feel, like people are attacking me, but to stay true to my own knowledge of like what I experience as overwhelm. And it has to do with too much empathy and too much compassion and
totally.
nowhere to put it. Like it's better for me to just do what I can do in my own arena. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard. And we in Buddhism we talk about reactivity, working with reactivity, but reactivity is an old story. Now we're in overreactivity. Reactivity is like a thing of the past. That's like, and so it's like, there is this delusion that if you're not outraged or overwhelmed or checking the New York Times every 10 minutes that you're somehow irresponsible or whatever. And it's just like, okay, like, I can have compassion for that view, but it's just like, I don't think that's wise. And I think that, we all have to be honest with ourselves about how much we want to consume in that territory. Because let's be honest, for the most part, it's basically junk food. I mean, how many bags of Cool Ranch Doritos are you going to eat every day? And so it's like, I think we all have to come to some kind of what's the healthy, intake of that. And it might be abstinence for some period of time. And you don't have to tell everybody either. Like I mean this is one of those things too where like sometimes we get in the Dharma space, we think we have to be transparent and honest with everybody. It's like people don't need to know how much or how little you do or you don't, or um, it's sometimes I think that a little bit of privacy goes a long way with these kinds of things. Um, I mean, I live in a very small rural town in Western. I live in the reddest county in Colorado, and for the most part, people in my community are very happy with the current situation, which actually makes it a lot easier going to the hardware store, frankly. And so, but nobody knows where to put me. Like, I mean, I drive a truck, I wear Carhartt pants, I got mud on my boots most of the time, and I try to put myself in a position where I can't be pigeonholed. And I think there's some skillfulness in being a little bit invisible.
Hmm.
Yeah, great question, and I'm with you on that one. I would just applaud your willingness to keep practicing with that, because that's really all you can do is practice with it, I think.
Thank you. Well, you gave me exactly the wisdom I needed. A little bit of privacy goes a long way. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut unless I'm
Yeah,
talking to you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Susanna Marshall.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for the talk. I think this is a really important discussion topic, and um, I think for me, like, I just wanted to share my experience a little bit. I definitely have had to watch less of the news. I've been watching my reactivity levels really closely, and for me, the benchmark is as long as I'm not shutting down, as long as I'm still taking action, then that's the most important thing. If I tune out the news and then don't act, then that's a problem. Then I'm not living the life that I feel that I'm meant to live as someone who's trying to be conscious of suffering and to care for suffering in the world. And so I guess I just want to, I also look to Thich Nhat Hanh, other
Yeah,
Buddhists who have been in the political spectrum and
totally.
see how they have done it. And, because they've been in these fights. Like Buddhists don't just tune out and check out just to be, one with the universe. They're like, no, suffering is real and it's suffering
Yeah.
is what we can learn from. And so I think just being able to take care of ourselves while we understand and learn from the suffering and then act. Like, I wonder if you have any thoughts on that at all.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Thich Nhat Hanh because I think he's the best example of that. Of socially engaged Buddhism or whatever you want to call it. And so I think yeah, I think that like again, being overwhelmed isn't so great. Disconnecting is not much better. And so how do we, and kind of, in trauma language, mental health language, like Dan Siegel language, Dan Siegel 101 is like, how do we stay within some kind of window of tolerance? And, like that's really the sweet spot is how do we stay within the window of tolerance? And how do we expand that window of tolerance? It's classic Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there's a gap. And how do we make that gap bigger? And how do we just move into that gap? And that's really, I think, in a very mindfulness way, and even in a secular mindfulness way, that's a great message. That's really what we want to cultivate is gap mode, where we're like, we're kind of like, we're in it. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, Dan Siegel's so good. His book Mindsight on this is really good. Thank you for the question. Yeah, Melanie, please.
Yeah, hi. I really liked your the meditation, especially just getting into the moment. And how is my body? Just concentrating on my body. How is it feeling right now? Touching the sofa here, feeling just every part, and that it's okay right now. That it's
Yeah,
okay right now. So that was, and uh, I found that much more calming than watching the breath, which I usually
I
do.
hear you. I'm a body guy. And I think that if there's anything I did, just one message, and I've been doing a lot of groups lately. My message lately is like, it's totally appropriate and totally okay. It's totally fine to be happy and joyous. The world does not need more suffering people. And if you're like, I'm going to do the right thing and suffer right along with everybody else, it's like, dude, come on. It's the both and. It's like, I mean, maybe the greatest form of activism at this day and age is to actually be a content person who's just kind and benevolent and simple and easeful. Maybe that's probably the greatest form of social revolution at this point, you know? So, yeah, I think and I think this is really the, I think this is the primary message that sits at the bottom of all the Buddhist teachings anyway, is that this is possible, and to me, that's a very trustworthy notion. It's okay to be happy. That's classic Thich Nhat Hanh. He said, happiness is available. Please help yourself to it.